Hello, and welcome. Today, you're not just watching, you're stepping into another life. You've woken up not in your room, not in your home, but in the heart of the American Wild West. It bakes the earth until it cracks. Every breath you take fills your lungs with a mix of dust and something more bitter, gunpowder maybe, or the faint rot of livestock. As your boots hit the packed clay road, every step sends up a tiny puff of grit that clings to your skin and settles into your teeth. You're already thirsty, and you've only just arrived. And even then, maybe not. This isn't the land of opportunity. It's the land of endurance. Water costs money. Everything costs money. And you don't know yet who you can trust to trade with. You hear piano keys through cracked windows, but not a melody. Just someone testing the notes, like the player is as tired as everyone else. Laughter spills out too, but it's sharp, almost cruel. Inside, the air will be thick with smoke and heat, full of people too drunk to see straight or too angry to sit still. Rat traps, you hear someone mutter. The rats have gotten bold lately. Not even the children are spared from the work. Inside, a body lies covered in canvas. No one pays much attention. You ask someone, a man with mud on his boots and a shotgun across his lap, what happened? He shrugs. Fever, he says. Or lead. Same thing out here. If you walk in there, you better have a reason. Otherwise, they'll make one for you. The town's well might be dry, or worse, poisoned. It's a place that takes you, piece by piece, breath by breath. Everyone prepares for the night, and whatever might come with it, you feel the town shifting around you. Like it's watching, waiting, testing. It doesn't care who you were before. Banker, preacher, outlaw, dreamer. It all ends the same if you're not careful. There's no room for softness, no time for doubt. This land demands hard choices, fast hands, and nerves like iron. Maybe even a warning. You'd take either, but the sheriff isn't on patrol. You don't want to draw attention. But in this place, silence is suspicious. Eye contact is dangerous, but avoiding it is worse. Everything is a test here. Every glance is a duel. Every question is a trap. And you're playing a game without knowing the rules. His office door is open, chair tipped back, boots resting on the desk. He's asleep or pretending to be. A rifle sits propped against the wall, within easy reach. So much for law and order. You look around for something familiar, something soft, but this place doesn't have edges like that. Even the dogs look mean, ribs showing through patchy fur, eyes glassy and tired. You've seen towns in movies. This isn't that. You came here thinking maybe you could start over. A clean slate. But there's no clean slate in the Wild West. Just a series of gambles, some with cards, others with lives. It's the 1870s. There's no electricity, no running water, and no second chances. Before we begin, take a deep breath and settle in. I want you to imagine the dirt under your boots, the sting of dry wind in your eyes, and the steady hum of danger that never quite fades. Let me know in the comments where you're re-watching from and what time it is there. And if you enjoy slipping through time like this, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. Now close your eyes, just for a second. Feel the sun overhead. It's not the kind that gently warms your skin. It scorches. This town doesn't have a name that matters. Maybe it's Deadwood, Tombstone, or Dry Creek. Doesn't make a difference. They're all cut from the same splintered wood. A half-built row of buildings lines either side of the main street. A saloon with its swinging doors creaking in the wind. A general store with a hand-painted sign that's starting to peel a jail. With a single barred window where someone's always watching. The buildings look tired, like they've seen more fire and bullets than they have paint. You walk past a stable and catch the sour scent of manure and sweat. A few horses, tied to posts, swat flies with their tails. Even they look like they're one bad day away from collapse. No one here is smiling. You feel eyes on you the moment you set foot in town. Not friendly eyes, suspicious ones, hard ones. People in this place don't meet strangers with kindness. They meet them with fingers near triggers and questions they don't always wait to ask. A wiry man leans against the corner of the saloon, a revolver hanging lazily from his belt. He spits into the dirt, eyes fixed on you like he's sizing you up for a coffin. A woman sweeps the front of the dry goods store, but pauses as you pass. She doesn't nod. She just watches. Everyone does. You don't belong here, not yet, and the town knows it. The first lesson of the frontier hits fast. No one is going to help you, not unless there's something in it for them. You reach for the water flask at your hip. It's already half empty. There are no public fountains here, no guarantees. The saloon is the most active building. You think maybe the sheriff will offer some kind of welcome. You try to make yourself small, not in posture, but in presence. A kid runs past you, barefoot, shirtless, carrying a sack over his shoulder that's twitching. A wagon rolls down the road, wooden wheels groaning. Welcome to the frontier. This isn't a place you visit, and the truth is, you're already running out of time. The sun is dipping lower now. Shadows stretch across the main road like reaching fingers. Doors close, windows shutter. You haven't even made it past your first hour, and already you're learning just how unforgiving the Wild West can be. The sun in the Wild West isn't just hot, it's relentless. It doesn't rise gently over the horizon. It explodes into the sky like a hammer, burning everything beneath it. There's no escape, no shade wide enough to shelter you. Your hat, if you've got one, does little more than delay the inevitable. By noon, sweat drips down your spine, soaks your collar, stings your eyes. The heat wraps around your body like a blanket made of fire, and it doesn't let go. Your throat dries fast, faster than it should. You'd think a few gulps from your flask would help, but the water inside is lukewarm, almost hot. It tastes like metal and dust. You sip it slowly, like it's gold, because out here, it might as well be. Clean water is never promised. Wells dry up, streams run brown with mud. And even if you find some, there's no guarantee. It's safe. You've heard stories. Men dropping to the ground just hours after drinking from the wrong puddle. Every breath brings dust. Fine, invisible particles that cling to the inside of your nose, line your tongue, scratch the back of your throat. You cough, but it doesn't help. The dust settles in your lungs and stays there. After just a few hours walking or riding, you're coated in it. Your boots, your sleeves, your eyelashes. It seeps into your clothes, your skin, your mouth. You taste it every time you swallow. The roads, if you can even call them that, stretch endlessly in front of you. Wide dirt paths with wagon ruts deep enough to snap an axle. No signs, no mile markers, just distance. Infinite, bone-dry, punishing distance. You try to measure it in footsteps at first, then in time, then in hope. But eventually, you just stop measuring it all. You just keep walking, one dusty step at a time. The land itself is cruel, flat and exposed in every direction. No trees, no cool wind, no rivers to guide your path. Only the occasional boulder or dry scrub brush breaking the monotony. In every direction, the horizon quivers in the heat, like the world itself is melting away. Your legs begin to ache early. Your knees buckle under the repetition. But there's nowhere to stop. No one to pick you up if you fall. When you do come across signs of life, they're more warning than comfort. Buzzards circle high overhead. They've learned to spot weakness. Bones bleached white by the sun litter the side of the trail. A rusted horseshoe here, a broken wheel there. Remnants of others who tried to make the same journey and failed. You wonder how long it took before they gave up. Days? Hours? You try to ration your energy, but the sun steals it. You try to pace yourself, but the dust pulls at your feet like sand. Your mouth dries again. Your tongue swells. You have to stop and pour a small splash of water into your palm, just to feel something cool against your skin. But the water evaporates almost immediately, like the land is claiming it before you can. Even your horse, if you've managed to keep one, is suffering. Its head hangs low, nostrils flared, sweat soaking its flanks. You can see the hesitation in its steps. It wants to lie down. You can't let it. If you lose your horse, you're finished. The distances are too long to cover on foot, and towns too far between to risk slowing down. At night, the cold sneaks in, but the dust stays. It hangs in the air, even after the sun drops behind the hills. The heat may be gone, but the feeling of dryness remains, like the land itself is still drawing the moisture from your body. You try to sleep, curled beneath a blanket or a coat, but your skin itches from the grit. Your nose is clogged, and your lips are cracked. In the morning, the cycle begins again. Another day beneath the angry sun. Another stretch of endless road. You hope to see a town, a campfire, a cabin, anything. But all you find is more distance. Sometimes the only sound is the wind carrying more dust into your eyes. Sometimes it's your own heartbeat, pounding in your ears, warning you that your body's limits are closer than you thought. And yet, this is how most people traveled, for trade, for gold, for land, for freedom. Whatever their reason, they walked these trails and suffered this silence. No one talks about the toll it took, how the landscape itself seemed to fight you, how the heat stripped away your strength, how the distance never got shorter, no matter how far you walked. It breaks you slowly, not all at once, like a shootout or a raid, but over days, over miles, you begin to hallucinate. Shapes on the horizon, voices in the wind. You start to wonder if that hill up ahead is real, or just a trick of the heat. You press on anyway, because stopping means dying. And dying out here? No one would find you. No one would bury you. You'd just be another set of bones along the trail. Another cautionary tale told in whispers by those who passed by and lived. Eventually, your boots begin to wear thin. The soles peel. Your socks are soaked with sweat and blood. Blisters burst, harden, tear again. You can't remember the last time you sat down. The last time you drank cold water. The last time your lungs didn't feel full of ash. This isn't a place that lets you thrive. It's a place that dares you to survive. And if you think you're ready for the Wild West, if you think your city training and your modern comforts make you tough, just wait until you've walked 50 miles under this sky with no shade, no sleep, and no promise of arrival. Then you'll understand why this land chewed people up and spit them out. Why graves lined the trails. Why so many gave up before they ever reached the dream they were chasing. The Wild West doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about your plans. It gives you one thing, the road, and it dares you to keep walking. Out here, the law isn't something you count on. It's something people carry on their hips. You learn that the first time you hear gunfire before breakfast. Not distant, not echoing off canyon walls, but just outside your room at the boarding house. 2 shots, loud and immediate, followed by silence. Not a scream, not a footstep, just a long, still hush, like even the wind paused to listen. You don't move at first. You're frozen, unsure if you should peek out the window or stay low. But eventually, curiosity drags you out. You step outside, and there he is. A man lying face down in the mud, steam rising from his back as the early morning sun hits the blood pooling beneath him. Nobody's running. Nobody's panicking. The saloon keeper is sweeping the steps like he didn't just hear a man die. The woman hanging laundry across the way pauses, shakes her head once, and keeps pinning clothes to the line. This is normal here. And that fact hits you harder than the sight of the body. Then you notice the sheriff, or what passes for one. He's on the porch of his office, reclining in a chair, bottle in hand, hat pulled low over his face. You watch as he shifts slightly, takes a drink, and lets out a slow, dry laugh. He saw it too. He just doesn't care. Or maybe he does, but he's learned the hard way that caring doesn't change much. There's no justice out here unless it's paid for or enforced personally. You step over the body like everyone else does, your stomach turning with each breath. You're not used to this, to life feeling this cheap, this fragile. But here, life isn't sacred. It's currency. It's leverage. It's something people gamble with, and for many, it's a debt they've long stopped paying. By midday, you see the shooter. He's sitting in the saloon, boots on the table, ordering whiskey like nothing happened. He isn't hiding. He isn't ashamed. He's just waiting for the next round, whether it's a drink or a fight. When you ask the barkeep who he is, the man shrugs. Depends on the week, he says. Sometimes he's a rancher. Sometimes he's muscle. Sometimes he just shoots people and keeps walking. No name, no consequences. Just another man with a fast hand and dead eyes. That's when it hits you. Out here, power isn't held by laws or titles. It's held by bullets. If you want to stay alive, you need a gun. Not because you want to shoot someone, but because you need to show you could. It's like a handshake out here. A silent contract that says, I won't mess with you if you don't mess with me. And right now, you don't even own a knife. You try to keep your head down. You try to be polite, but even that's a gamble. You thank someone for holding a door, and they think you're mocking them. You walk too fast, and they think you're running from something. You walk too slow, and they think you're watching them. Every move is a risk. Every word is a roll of the dice. You ask again about the sheriff, if there's another one, if this town ever had someone who enforced order. A store clerk laughs and points to a set of bullet holes in the side of his building. Last one tried to break up a poker game, he says. Didn't make it to his horse. Turns out, the badge means nothing if the town doesn't want it to. And this town has long since chosen chaos over rules. Disputes are settled not in courtrooms, but in alleyways and behind stables. Fistfights that turn into gunfights. Arguments that end with someone getting buried behind the church. You even hear stories of judges being shot on their way into town, not by outlaws, but by ranchers who didn't like the way a verdict turned out. Justice isn't blind here. It's just dead. And the outlaws? They don't hide in the hills anymore. They walk through town in broad daylight. They sit at poker tables, drink at the bar, and sometimes even pay for their rounds. They're not worried. Why would they be? They've got friends in every corner. Some of them used to be lawmen. Some still are. You could be sitting next to one and never know it until your coin purse goes missing or someone slits your throat in the dark. You start to understand the hierarchy. There rest the rich, the cattle barons and landowners, who have private guards and pay off whoever needs paying. Then there's the violent, the gunslingers, bounty hunters, and drifters who trade fear like currency. After that comes everyone else. And you? You're not even on the list yet. You're a stranger, soft, unarmed, a walking opportunity. You see it in the way people look at you, like you a rabbit in a den full of foxes. You expect someone to help, to offer guidance. But they won't, because if they side with you and you end up on the wrong side of a bullet, they go down with you. So they pretend not to see. They close their doors. They stay quiet. Eventually, you're told to find your own way. Buy a gun, learn to shoot, keep your back to a wall. And even that might not be enough. One man tells you, out here, you don't win fights. You survive them. You ask what happens if you don't want to fight at all. He just laughs and walks away. That night, the saloon gets rowdy. A game goes bad. Cards fly. A chair crashes. Someone pulls a gun. The crowd clears. And just like that, another man drops. You don't know what it was about. Nobody does. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the man who lived walks out with a bottle in hand and a new story to tell. The man who died gets dragged into the street like trash. The sheriff never shows. This is the Wild West. Not the romantic one from books, but the real one. Raw, ruthless, lawless. Out here, mercy is a weakness, and justice is a myth. And if you think the good guys win, you won't last the week. Nightfall in the Wild West doesn't bring peace. It brings uncertainty, and the kind of silence that makes you sit up and question if you're truly alone. There's no warm bed waiting for you. No sturdy door to lock behind you. Out here, sleep is never deep, and rest is rarely safe. You lie down not because the day is over, but because your body has simply given up for a while. You settle into a lice-ridden cot behind the saloon. Their cries ripple across the plains like ghost song, fading and returning, reminding you how alone you are. Your sleep comes in shallow waves, half-conscious moments where your mind drifts, just far enough to lose track of time, but not far enough to forget the world around you. Every twig snap jolts you. Every shift in the wind has you reaching instinctively for your weapon. You've been told that a man with nothing to lose sleeps soundest. That may be true, but only if he's already made peace with dying. The horses tethered nearby twitch nervously, ears flicking, hooves shuffling in the dirt. They hear what you can't. They always do. But most nights, your bones ache, your head throbs, and your eyes sting before the sun even crests the hills. You rise before the sun fully breaks the horizon, pack what little you have, and move. Always move. Because staying in one place too long makes you noticeable, makes you vulnerable. Out here, stillness is as dangerous as sleep, and you never know what you'll wake up to. Or if you'll wake up at all, you're not rested, just less exhausted than you were the night before. They talk about campfires under the stars, about freedom and open skies, but they don't know the truth. They don't know the fear of every creak in the night. They've never jerked awake with a knife in hand, heart pounding like a war drum. They've never slept with their boots on for weeks, never counted the hours they dared to shut their eyes. The heat gives way to a sudden, biting cold. The desert that baked your skin in the day now saps your warmth through the earth. You curl tighter, not out of comfort, out of necessity. You've lost count of the nights you've woken up shaking, teeth chattering, limbs stiff and numb. If you're lucky, there's someone else nearby, a partner, a fellow traveler, someone to share warmth and watch the darkness with. But most nights, it's just you and the vast, uncaring quiet. It's barely a bed, more a wooden frame with a stained, sagging canvas stretched over it, stuffed with straw that smells like mildew and something vaguely animal. It's the people. You learn that fast. Outlaws don't sleep much. They hunt. They raid. They travel by starlight to avoid being seen. More than once, you've heard stories of men sliced open in their sleep, pockets turned inside out, boots taken off their still warm feet. Sometimes they don't even take anything, just send a message that no one is untouchable. Just last week, you heard of a man strangling in his tent with his own bedroll. No motive, just cruelty. You don't even bother to remove your boots. Nobody does. You can't afford the few seconds it would take to lace them back up if something went wrong. Why you sleep facing the door if you've got one. Why you don't let yourself dream too deeply. You don't know who might walk through that door. And you don't know if they'll walk out again. You lay your hat over your face, not to block out light, but to keep the buzzing flies from landing on your eyes. You find yourself listening for patterns. The rhythm of bootsteps outside, the familiar scrape of spurs, the dragging sound of someone drunk, but not dangerous. You memorize the weight of your blanket, so you'll know immediately if it's been lifted or moved. You place pebbles in strategic spots outside your tent, or lean a stick just right, so it'll snap if someone walks by. Traps? Maybe. But out here, it's just smart sleeping. Beside your hand, tucked beneath your blanket, is the dull blade you sleep with. It's not sharp. Not really. But it's better than nothing. The floorboards creak with every breath the saloon takes. Footsteps above, laughter bleeding through the walls, an occasional chair scraped harshly across the wooden floor. Someone coughs. Someone cries out in their sleep, and every sound forces your hand closer to the hilt of that blade. You wish you could trust the walls to protect you, but they re as thin as paper and down to do much more than trap the heat and smell of sweat and whiskey. On nights when you don't even have a cot, when the saloon is full or the innkeeper sends you away, you find yourself under the stars. It sounds poetic until you're lying on hard-packed dirt, a rock jammed beneath your spine, and your ears straining against the sounds of the open desert. The fire, if you risk one, is small and cautious. Smoke can draw attention. And out here, attention gets people killed. Coyotes howl in the distance. Sometimes wolves. You can't always tell which is which. You think about closing your eyes fully, letting your body relax into the night, but you never do. Not really. Out here, night is when things crawl. The worst part isn't the animals or the cold. That's why you sleep with your back to a wall. If you can find one, your body never gets used to it. The paranoia becomes part of your routine. Some nights are quieter than others. You get a few hours strung together, and in the morning, your body is surprised at the rest. And even when morning comes, there's no peace. You hear stories about city folk who romanticize this life. Out here, sleep isn't rest. It's a gamble.
You start to notice it right away, how every person you pass has something hanging from their hip or tucked beneath their coat. A revolver, a Bowie knife, a rusted shotgun, a hidden blade stitched into a boot or sleeve. Out here, it's not just the outlaws who carry weapons. It's the shopkeeper, the preacher, the old woman selling biscuits from a wagon. It's in the way people walk with their shoulders slightly turned, always keeping one side open in case they need to draw fast. It's in the way conversations pause when a stranger enters the room, in the way nobody ever lets their back face a window. But if they think hurting you might improve their chances of surviving the week, they won't hesitate. You're not a person to them. You're a variable, a question mark, a possible meal, a possible threat. Even the kid sweeping the porch of the saloon has a slingshot on his belt and a hunting knife strapped to his ankle. You find yourself mirroring it, eyes dotting from belt to boot to hand. You watch the way people move, how they shift their weight, how they reach for their hat or their drink or their sack. But by then, the shooter's long gone. Or worse, still there, finishing his drink like nothing happened. You sit quietly at your table, pretending you didn't see it, because you don't want to be the next reason someone drops. A crowd is a cluster of triggers waiting to be pulled. It settles deeper into your boat. You lie awake, thinking about the sound of a revolver being cocked, the flash of steel in the dark. Because even when someone's smiling, even when their hands are empty, even when their words are sweet, you don't know what's in their coat, what's under the table, what's hiding behind their eye. You remember every glance that lingered too long, every smile that felt just a little too sharp. Your mind replays them like warnings, like whispers trying to keep you alive. A tavern packed with boadies means dozens of fingers twitching towards steel the moment someone raises their voice. But now you realize it's not about toughness. It's about vigilance, about staying sharp, even when your body begs you to rest. It's about understanding that everyone's armed and everyone's desperate. And out here, that's a lethal combination. An argument over cards, a spilled drink, a misheard insult. That's all it takes. And suddenly, The air is full of shouting, of splinters, of smoke. How do you keep your soul when your finger never leaves the trigger? How do you love when everyone you meet could be your killer? You don't know. Maybe they don't either. Maybe they've just stopped trying. Every motion tells a story, and you learn to read them fast. Because if you don't, you won't be around long enough to finish this sentence. This is a land where violence isn't just expected, it's assumed. By mid-morning, your body is already on edge. You're exhausted before the day has even found its rhythm. Your hands tremble when you fill your canteen. Your heartbeat doesn't slow down even when you sit to rest. Her husband, already 3 whiskeys deep and balancing pride on a knife's edge, didn't ask questions. He stirred, he drew, he fired, and the card player slumped forward onto the table, coins rolling across the floor like they were trying to escape the room. The woman didn't scream. She didn't run. She just stood there, like this wasn't the first time, like it wouldn't be the last. You try to eat a piece of jerky and it sticks in your throat, not from dryness, but because you're watching the man across from you watching you. You see it in their eyes. Bloodshot, sunken, scanning for opportunities, calculating risks. Most of the folks here don't have much to lose, and that makes them dangerous. A starving man will kill for less than a loaf of bread. A man with debts will shoot for a horse. A widow with nothing left will set fire to a barn if she thinks it might bring a bounty or a distraction. Nobody trusts anyone, and that includes you. You step into the general store and feel the eyes on you before the door finishes swinging shut. The man behind the counter stops tallying his inventory and just watches, one hand resting casually on a shotgun kept beneath the register. He doesn't ask how you are. He doesn't greet you. He just waits to see what kind of problem you might be. You don't touch anything. You keep your hands visible. You speak slowly, clearly, because one wrong word, one wrong glance could turn this dusty little room into a coffin. The tension isn't loud. It's not men screaming in the street or fists flying in bars. It's quieter than that. You're not in a town. You're in a pressure cooker, and everyone inside is just waiting to boil over. It doesn't help that desperation hangs over everything like smoke. They don't want to hurt you, not really. You can feel it on your skin, that constant scanning, and it wears on you. Not just physically, but deeper in your gut, in your nerves, in the way your jaw clenches without you realizing. There's no real safety in numbers here either. Crowds don't protect you. They just multiply the risk. You watch a man die at the poker table one night, not from cheating, but from looking too long at the wrong woman. There's no justice coming for the killer. The sheriff might hear the shot and take a stroll through the saloon. Half an hour later, even when the sun sets and the desert cools, the tension doesn't break, and there's no end to it. No break, no moment when you can fully let your guard down. Trust is a luxury out here, one you can't afford, and it makes you wonder, not just how people survive this world, but how it doesn't consume them. You thought you were ready for the Wild West. You thought grit and determination would be enough. Out here, hunger isn't a temporary discomfort. It's a slow gnawing ache that follows you like your own shadow. It isn't just that the food is bad. It's that the food itself might be trying to kill you. Every bite is a gamble. Every mouthful a question you won't get answered until hours later. Maybe when your gut twists in agony or you wake up sweating through your blanket, fevered and shivering, praying it's not dysentery again. The meals of the Wild West are simple, if you can even call them that. Beans, salt pork, maybe a chunk of hardtack or stale bread if you're lucky. And that's assuming you've got coin in your pocket or something to barter. Most days you're chewing on whatever you can find or carry, and it's never enough. You quickly learn that food out here isn't about flavor. It's about survival. And even then, it doesn't always help. Salt pork is the most common thing on a plate, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Thick, fatty chunks of meat drowned in salt until the texture's somewhere between jerky and shoe leather. It doesn't rot as fast that way, but it's still greasy, stringy, and hard on the teeth. You chew and chew, and it fights back the whole time. Swallowing it feels like forcing down guilt. And if it has gone slightly rancid, which it often has, you will know within the hour. Your stomach will clench like a fist, and your body will work fast to eject the poison you just dared to eat. Then there are the beans. Always beans. Black, pinto, kidney, it doesn't matter. They're boiled in rusty pots over open flames, scooped out into tin bowls, and eaten with whatever spoon hasn't been stolen or melted by fire. Some folks throw in a bit of molasses if they're feeling generous, but more often than not, they're just mush. Bland, heavy, gritty. Sometimes you find pebbles in the mix, accidentally harvested with the beans, cooked and served like seasoning. You bite down and chip a tooth. That's just how it is. Bread, when you can find it, is rarely fresh. More like a brick than a loaf. Dry and hard, cracked on top from sitting too long without moisture. You dunk it in your coffee to soften it, if you've got any, or chew, slowly and painfully, feeling the crumbs scratch your throat on the way down. If the bread is too soft, that's not a blessing. It means mold. And mold out here doesn't come with expiration dates or warnings. You don't scrape it off. You toss the whole thing unless you're desperate. And you will be. There are stews too sometimes. Bubbling pots of mystery meat and potatoes that look hearty if you squint and try not to breathe in too deeply. You ask where the meat came from, and the cook just shrugs. Might be squirrel, might be raccoon, might be something else entirely. That's not to ask. If it's been simmering long enough, the smell of rot is covered by spices, if any are available. But stew can be a death sentence, especially if it was cooked in a pot that hasn't been cleaned in weeks, or made from meat that sat unrefrigerated under the blazing sun. Botulism doesn't care about your appetite. Clean water is a luxury almost. No one has. You drink from canteens filled days ago, from rain barrels thick with grime, or from shallow creeks that double as livestock baths, and sometimes latrines. You boil what you can, but firewood is scarce, and boiling takes time. Time you don't always have. So you roll the dice. You drink anyway, and you hope. You learn the signs of sickness quickly. The sharp cramp that comes out of nowhere, the sudden sweat beading on your brow, the fire in your belly that spreads until you can't stand up straight. You find yourself curled in the dirt behind a stable, retching until your throat is raw, fever burning through your limbs. No doctor, no medicine, just a prayer to the stars and the hope that your body can survive the punishment. If you're working a ranch or traveling in a wagon train, your diet doesn't improve. It just becomes more repetitive. Same beans, same pork, same water rationed by the cupful. You start to dream about real food. Bread that doesn't crack teeth. Apples that aren't brown and bruised. Meat that's cooked all the way through and not crawling with flies. Occasionally, someone will offer you something that seems like a feast. Eggs, milk, maybe even a slice of pie. You should be grateful, and you are. But there's always a sliver of fear, too. Where did the milk come from? Has it turned? Were the eggs fresh? Or found in the dirt days ago? The pie tastes sweet, too sweet. Your teeth. Hey, and you wonder if the sugar is covering something worse. In towns, the restaurants, if you can call them that, serve whatever they can scrape together. Meat pies are popular, mostly because you can't see what's inside them. Could be beef, could be last week's leftovers reheated and covered in gravy. You take slow, cautious bites and force it down with a grimace. You're grateful, but you're nervous. And in the back of your mind, you remember the stories of whole crews of men felled by a single spoiled pot of stew, of children who drank from the wrong way, of an entire saloon cleared out when the cook served up beans soaked in copper-bottomed pots that leached metal into every serving. It's not rare. It's expected. Out here, sickness is just another part of the meal. You hear about diseases like dysentery and cholera, but they're not just words. They're everyday threat. You watch men go from upright to unconscious in a matter of hours. You see the way their hands tremble, their faces go pale, their bodies waste away. You try to help, but what can you do? Boil water. Too late. Offer broth. They can't keep it down. You hold a rag to their forehead and hope it doesn't happen to you next. In the worst times, there's nothing at all. No beans, no pork, no bread. You chew on rawhide to keep your mouth busy. You suck on pebbles to trick your tongue into thinking it's tasting something. You kill a bird if you're lucky and cook it over a flame, watching it sizzle and spit as the smell of grease draws the eyes of every hungry soul nearby. You eat fast. You don't share. You can't. Food becomes a memory of what it once was. Not a joy, not a comfort, but a constant calculation. Can I eat this? Should I eat this? Will it kill me? And yet you eat anyway, because the alternative is slow. Hunger never stops asking. You didn't think food would be one of the biggest dangers out here, but now you know better. In the Wild West, even the things that are supposed to keep you alive might be the first things to take you down.
You start coughing one morning, just a little at first. A dry rasp that scrapes your throat and settles deep in your chest. You brush it off, blame the dust, the cold night air, the smoke from the campfire. But by noon, you're sweating through your clothes. Your breath is shallow, your joints ache, and your ribs hurt every time you laugh or speak. You know the signs. It's sickness. And out here, sickness spreads faster than bullets and rides harder than any outlaw. You sit against the side of a stable, hoping it'll pass. Hoping it's just a chill, but that hope fades with the sun. Fever rolls in like a storm. Your vision swims. The world feels tilted. There's no urgent care, no clinics, no pills to take with a glass of clean water. Just whiskey, laudanum if you're lucky, and the whispers of people wondering if it's contagious. In the Wild West, a cold can kill. A scratch can turn into rot. And a toothache? That might be the end of you. There's no doctor, in the sense you're used to. The man folks call Doc down at the end of town spends more time passed out on his porch than inside his shack. He has a rusty saw, a bottle of morphine hidden behind some books, and hands that shake even before he drinks. He'll treat you if you've got coin or whiskey to pay, and if he has sober enough to stand. Otherwise, you're on your own. Infections don't wait for appointments. They bloom fast, hot, red, and angry. You see it all the time. A minor cut from a barbed wire fence turns black and swollen in days. You watch a man lose 3 fingers after nicking his hand on a splintered fence post. Another, bitten by a stray dog, begins trembling and foaming a week later. Nobody gets close after that. They just wait. The cemetery on the hill is filled with wooden crosses, most without names. Some of those people didn't die in gunfights. They died coughing out blood, or from stomachs bloated with rot, or from infections that worked their way inward, inch by inch, until the heart gave out. It's not quick. It's not clean. It's not heroic. It's slow, ugly, and terrifying. You meet a man missing an eye. He lost it to an infected eyelid, just a swollen bump he tried to lance himself with a heated nail. Another tells you about pulling his own tooth out with pliers in a saloon, screaming into a rag as the blood poured down his chin. Nobody helped. They just watched. A kind of respect, maybe, or just fear that they'd be next. Children die the fastest. You see it in the eyes of mothers who've already buried 2 or 3. Typhoid, smallpox, measles. Things you once thought were distant, historical names, here, they're just part of life. Part of death. Babies born in dirt-floored cabins, wrapped in rags, breathing in dust and smoke from the day they enter this world. Their cries don't always last long. You try to keep yourself clean. You wash when you can. Scrub your hands with lye soap if it's available. But the water is brown, the cloths are filthy, and every surface you touch carries the sweat, spit, and sickness of everyone who came before you. There's no hand sanitizer, no antiseptic, no sterile anything. You press a dirty rag to a wound and hope it is not the one that'll kill you. You once watched someone get shot in the leg. Not a fatal wound. The bullet passed clean through. But within days, the leg had turned the color of spoiled meat. The smell filled the room. Flies buzzed around his blankets. The doc came with his saw. No gloves, no masks, no warnings. He poured whiskey on the blade and told the man to bite down on a stick. You stood outside the shack and listened to the screaming, trying not to imagine it as your own. And it's not just injury and infection. The air itself feels tainted. The towns reek of smoke, manure, and rot. The saloons are full of coughing men, hacking up phlegm into spittoons, wiping their mouths with filthy sleeves. You dodge the splatter. You hold your breath longer than you should. But you can't hide from the germs that drift like dust. They're in your lungs, your water, your clothes. They follow you like ghosts. You think about medicine back home. Pills in neat bottles. Hospitals with white sheets and trained hands. Vaccines. IVs. And it all feels like a dream someone else told you once. Out here, survival is based on luck and stubbornness. If your immune system fails, no one will save you. If you break a bone, you either limp for life or hope someone can set it right before it heals wrong. If your appendix bursts, you'll be buried before sunset. Laudanum dulls the pain, but it doesn't heal. It just fogs your mind enough to pretend you're not dying. And it's addictive. You've seen too many folks chasing that dream, sipping from the bottle more and more until they stop showing up altogether. Dead in a corner with their fingers still wrapped around the neck of the flask. Whiskey is the other medicine. Burns on the way down, numbs a wound just enough for the knife to come out. But it doesn't clean anything. And sometimes it makes the bleeding worse. You once saw a man with a knife in his gut sit down, drink a full bottle, and pass out. He never woke up. There are no antiseptics, no antibiotics, no surgeons with steady hands and stainless tools. Just whatever you can find, whoever is sober, and whatever God you still believe in. Some folks wear herbs around their necks or whisper prayers learned from their grandmother. Others don't bother. They've seen too much. They know that when disease comes galloping through town, there's no fighting it. You can only hope it passes you by. You grow paranoid. Every ache becomes a warning. Every scratch gets inspected. You drink less water unless you're sure it's clean. You try not to breathe too deeply in crowds. You stop shaking hands. You don't touch doorknobs with bare skin. And still, you get sick. Everyone does. The only question is whether your body's strong enough to ride it out. You miss things you never thought you'd miss. Thermometers, bandages, a soft bed to lie in while someone checks your pulse. A nurse's calm voice. The certainty that someone somewhere knew what to do. Out here, no one knows. They guess. They gamble. And when they lose, the graveyard grows by another wooden cross. And you realize something even worse than death itself. Dying in the Wild West doesn't always come with dignity. Sometimes it comes with days of fevered mumbling, of your body leaking and shivering and moaning while the people around you pull away in fear. Sometimes it means being left alone on the edge of camp, wrapped in a thin blanket while someone mutters, "He's not gonna make it." And maybe you won't, because out here, disease doesn't knock. It kicks the door in.
You learn quickly that the Wild West doesn't forgive and it never forgets. There's no room for error out here. Not when survival is built on instinct, reputation, and the quickness of your draw. The town already has its players, the ranchers, the gamblers, the barkeeps, the thieves, the widows, the killers. They know each other's business. They've traded favors and threats for years. But you walked in with dust on your boots and no history in your name. No one owes you. No one fears you. And that makes you the easiest mark in town. One wrong word, one sideways glance, one tiny mistake, and you're not just in trouble, you're in danger. But then you notice how conversations go quiet when you step into a room, how hands drift subtly toward holster. The accusation was quiet, almost polite, but a moment later, the air exploded. Chairs crashed backward, guns cleared holsters, and two men were bleeding on the floor before anyone could blink. One survived, the other didn't, and the dealer who made the call just lit a cigarette and kept playing. How someone always seems to be watching you. The dealer at the poker table, the man drinking alone at the bar, the stable hand pretending to sweep near your horse. If something happens, if a man pulls a gun on you in the street and you shoot him dead, they're S. No guarantee anyone will believe your side. Maybe his friends lie for him. Maybe the sheriff doesn't like your face. Maybe the dead man had family with connections, and now you've got a price on your head. You second guess everything. The way you sit, the way you walk, who you nod to and who you ignore. People assume you ran because you were scared, that you couldn't handle the pressure, that you backed out of a deal, and that kind of reputation will follow you. You might still owe money to someone who doesn't care about excuses. You might still lose at a card game and face an accusation you can talk your way out of. From saloon to saloon, from town to town. The West might look wide and open, but word travels fast, and people remember weakness. Every interaction is a minefield, and the mines don't come with warning signs. Maybe you borrowed coin for a drink and promised to return it after the next cattle drive. Reputation isn't just something you build. It's something others decide for you. You measure your voice when you speak. You practice your stare in the mirror, not to look threatening, but to look calm, solid, like someone not to be underestimated. Because the only thing more dangerous than a known outlaw is an unknown man who doesn't flinch. Too good to share a bottle. Before you can explain, his hands on his belt, and three of his friends are rising from their chairs, and they don't want to talk. Heart pounding, mouth drop, wondering if this is how your story ends. Not with glory, not with gold. One mistake, one moment. That's all it takes. But with a single misstep, a single breath out of place, in a town that never gave you a chance. And once you've been labeled a coward, a cheat, or a fool, it sticks. Whispers follow you through town. People start testing you more, pushing your limit. And the second you back down, they move in like wolves. Maybe you hired a guide to get you through a stretch of desert and didn't pay what he expected. Doesn't matter if you meant well. Doesn't matter if you just didn't have the cash yet. Around here, a broken promise is seen as betrayal. And betrayal is answered with lead. Someone accidentally bumps your shoulder walking past. Or maybe it's just a long, silent stare, held half a second too long. This isn't a world of laws and appeals and apologies. This is a world of consequence, and everyone's watching to see how you carry yourself under pressure. They want to see if you'll flinch, if you'll stand your ground, if you'll reach for steel, power, and reputation. You either earn respect through fear or forge it by surviving so many fights that people start to think twice before crossing you. And if you do, if you show fear or arrogance or even the faintest sign of weakness, the kind of danger that ends with a boot on your chest and a gun in your face. And worse still, no one will come running to help you. Because around here, people pick sides fast, and you're not on anybody's side. You're the outsider. That's what they call you. If they bother calling you anything at all, at first it feels like paranoia. Like maybe you're imagining the tension. Then comes the test. It could be anything. A stranger slaps your drink off the table and waits to see what you'll do. You're not in a civilized place. Take poker, for instance. You sit at the table, trying to read your cards and the other faces around you, but it's not just about the hand. It's about how you place your bet. Whether your eyes twitch, whether your voice cracks when you say cook. The others aren't just playing to win. They're watching for tells, for nerves, for signs that you're bluffing or don't belong. And if someone thinks you're cheating, whether you are or not, that's it. No discussion. No second chance. You've seen it happen already. A man accused of dealing from the bottom of the deck. Sometimes it's not about cards at all. Sometimes all it takes is forgetting to pay a debt. You might be thinking, I'll just stay out of trouble. Keep my head down. Be polite. But it's not that simple. Even silence can be dangerous. You turn down a drink from a man at the bar, and suddenly he's offended. Think you're better than him. The worst part is, there's no real justice. You could be in the right. You could be defending yourself. But out here, that's not what matters. What matters is perception. But how long can you keep that up? It grinds you down. Living like this. Always calculating your words. Always scanning for threats. You think about leaving, but leaving has its risks. You start walking differently, talking differently. Even then, it might not be enough. You might still step into the wrong saloon on the wrong night. And when that happens, when the chair legs scrape back from the floor and the silence hits like thunder, you'll find yourself staring down a barrel. That's the cost of being here. That's the price of surviving a day in the Wild West.
The stories lied to you. The paintings, the novels, the dime store tailies of galloping heroes silhouetted against golden sunsets. They forgot to mention the pain, the grit, the dull ache that starts behind your knees and rises like smoke up your spine. The saddle is worn and stiff, the leather cracked from years of sun and sweat. It creaks under your weight, and the horse shifts, restless beneath you, not interested in being ridden today or any day. You fumble with the stirrups. One foot slips. You heave yourself into place with more awkwardness than grace, and then you're off. But it's not a smooth glide. It's a jolt, a jarring bounce with every step the horse takes. Because out here in the Wild West, riding a horse isn't some poetic freedom. It's a slow form of torture. A mix of sweat, manure, and that sour, warm animal musk that clings to everything, including you. It pulls to the left when you want right. It stops abruptly and shakes its head, almost throwing you off. Towns are hours apart. Ranches spread thin across the land. The landscape stretches forever, wide and harsh and empty. And if you want to reach the next watering hole before nightfall, you ride, even when the sun is high and your head is pounding. You hardly recognize the reflection. You were clean once, comfortable, maybe even proud. Now you're just surviving. And the saddle marks on your legs are as much a part of you as your name. Even when every bump in the road feels like a hammer to the hips. They dawn to talk about the groin chafing, or the way your knees swell, or the numbness that creeps into your toes. They skip over the misery, paint it with romantic strokes. It wants to move again. And you? You don't want to get back on. Not yet. But you will. Because the sun is sinking, and there's still a long way to go. Cowboys and outlaws, free as the wind. But you know better. You learn to grip harder, to speak softly, to coax instead of command. Because if you panic, if you yank too hard, or shout, or dig your heels too deep, you might spook the animal. And if it throws you, that's it. You could break a leg out here, miles from town, with nothing but rocks and rattlesnakes for company. The West doesn't wait for the injured. After hours in the saddle, your own scent begins to sour, and the filth settles in. You don't notice it right away, but others do. You pass a man in town, and he grimaces slightly as he moves by. You dismount slowly, carefully, feeling every tendon scream in protest as your legs straighten. They just shrug, swing back into their saddles, and ride on like it's nothing. Maybe they're numb. Maybe they've been broken in, like the horses themselves, worked until the pain became routine. Or maybe they know the truth, that riding is suffering, but walking is worse. The moment your boots hit the ground, your knees buckle slightly. You grab the saddle horn just to stay upright. You try to walk, but you're stiff, bow-legged, limping without meaning to. The saddle has molded your body into something crooked, and it'll take hours before you move normally again, if normal even exists out here. You realize then that you've become part of the smell of the West, sweat, saddle, and soil. And yet, you do it, because there's no other way. From the moment you mount up, the fantasy starts to die. You start to hunch forward, then lean back, then adjust again. Nothing helps. Your lower back throbs like it's been worked over with a mallet, and your shoulders tighten from trying to hold yourself steady. The reins dig into your fingers. Your wrists ache. You clench your jaw against the rhythm of the pain. You thought riding would feel like flying, but it feels like falling, over and over again. Your thighs begin to burn after the first hour, the muscles gripping the saddle instinctively, desperately, trying to stay balanced. You try to shift your weight, try to find the perfect angle, but there isn't one. Every new position just creates a new pain. The inside of your legs rub raw against the stiff leather. You can feel the bruises forming beneath your clothes, deep purple reminders of every rock the horse stumbled over. Your tailbone becomes your enemy. Every downward thud, every time the horse drops into a trot or jolts forward without warning, sends a jolt up your spine. Then there's the heat. The saddle leather soaks in the sun, and now it's hot against your legs. Sweat pools in every crevice, turning your shirt damp, your pants slick. Your thighs feel like they're on fire. You pray for a breeze, but there is none. Only dust. The wind kicks it up in clouds, and it sticks to your skin, coats your tongue, clings to your eyelashes. You wipe your brow with the sleeve already stiff with grime, and the smell. Horses are noble, sure, but they stink. Sometimes the horse decides it doesn't want to cooperate, and yet you keep going, because walking isn't an option. The distances are too great. You stop only when the horse demands it. You stretch, rub your thighs, curse under your breath. You wonder how anyone gets used to this. But the old cowhands don't complain. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle or a dusty window pane, sunburned, slouched, eyes squinting against the light. No one writes poems about the saddle sores, or the way your spine pops after dismounting, or how you can't sit on hard wood for days after a long ride, because riding isn't freedom. It's endurance. The horse beneath you snorts, pawing at the dirt. There are rattlesnakes under the floorboards and mountain lions in the canyons. But out here, it has not the claws and fangs that keep you up at night. It has the men. Beasts might kill you, sure, but they do it clean. They do it for hunger, for instinct, and they vanish back into the wilderness when they're done. Men, on the other hand, kill for cruelty, for coin, for reputation. And they'll look you in the eye as they do it, maybe even smile while your blood stains the dust. You sleep light. Every creak of wood, every rustle in the grass, jerks you half awake. Is it a coyote? A cougar? Or is it a man with a grudge, creeping up with a bowie knife in one hand and a rope in the other? You can't tell. So you lie still, hand resting on the butt of a pistol that hasn't been cleaned in days, breath caught between sleep and panic. The fire you lit earlier has burned low, not enough to keep anything away, but just enough to light your silhouette. A beacon for anyone hunting in the dark. You've heard stories. Everyone has. A family slaughtered on the road between San Marcos and Pecos. Wagon looted, bodies burned in their own tent. A stagecoach stopped by a band of masked riders. The men shot, the women vanished. A bounty hunter mistaken for an outlaw and hanged from his own saddle horn. You don't know what is true and what is just talk passed around to fill silences, but none of it sounds impossible. Not out here. Even in town, the danger doesn't let up. There's always someone watching you. A drifter leaning in a doorway, chewing something slow. A pair of strangers who stop talking when you get too close. You don't know who's a rancher, who's a rustler, who's a hired gun. The lines blur fast. One night a man tips his hat to you, friendly as can be. The next day, you hear someone was found dead in an alley, shot clean through the back. You remember the hat. You don't ask questions. Out in the canyons, it gets worse. You might think you alone. Just you and your horse, picking along a dry creek bed, but the rocks have eyes. Men lie in wait, rifles resting on stone, horses hidden behind scrub. They know the land. They've ambushed soldiers, robbed supply trains, disappeared into gullies no map has ever marked. You hear the crack of a gunshot and have no idea where it came from. No time to react. If you're lucky, it misses. If you're not, the ground comes up fast and everything goes red. And they don't always come with guns. Sometimes it's a snare in the dark, a rope strung ankle high across a trail. A silent figure with a blackjack hiding behind a tree. You wake up tied to a post, bleeding, stripped of your boots and your dignity, left for the buzzards. If they leave you alive at all. Then there are the bounty hunters, men who kill for a living, but with a badge of paper to make it legal. Some are decent. Some aren't. The problem is, you can't tell the difference until your hands are tied, and your name is being read off a wanted poster you've never seen. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe your name sounds like someone else's. Maybe a lie got passed along in the next town over, and now you're worth $50 dead or alive. And most of the time, dead is easier. The roads are long and unguarded. You try to travel with others, but even then, there's no safety. Some riders talk big around the fire, claiming they've shot men in cold blood. Maybe they have. Maybe they're lying. Doesn't matter. Either way, you sleep with your knife near your ribs. You take the first watch, not because you're generous, but because you don't trust anyone else to keep it. Especially not when there's gold in your saddlebags or a decent rifle in your scabbard. In the West, trust is just another risk you can't afford. And then there are the beasts. The actual ones. Rattlesnakes that coil in your boots if you forget to shake them out. Coyotes that cry like children at night, setting your nerves on edge with every haunting yelp. Bears that tear through camps for scraps, or wolves that circle just beyond the reach of firelight, eyes glowing like coals. You hear their breathing. You see the prints they leave in the mud. And you wonder, is that claw mark older than a day? Or is it fresh? But even still, it has the two-legged threats that keep your pistol loaded and your horse saddled for a quick getaway. The West is wide, yes, but nowhere is far enough from the reach of a desperate man. Desperation breeds violence here, and everyone is desperate. For land, for food, for revenge, for reputation. They don't need a reason to hurt you. They just need the opportunity. You begin to move differently, slower, eyes scanning, back never turned. When you enter a saloon, you find a wall to lean against. When you drink, you take small sips and keep your ears open. When someone new walks in, you watch their hands. When you sleep, you make sure your gun is within reach, but not too close to be stolen while you dream. Paranoia doesn't just visit the Wild West. It takes up permanent residence. And soon, you're not even sure who you were before. You forget what it felt like to trust a stranger, to speak without watching for a reaction. You become part of the environment, another wild thing trying to survive the night. And when you finally do run into a mountain lion, or hear the dry hiss of a rattlesnake beneath your bedroll, it almost feels like a relief. At least these beasts are honest. They don't wear disguises. They don't wait until your back is turned. They strike because they're animals. And somehow, that feels cleaner. But men? You can't hear them coming. And by the time you do, it's already too late. The swinging doors creak as you step inside, and the scent hits you like a blow. Smoke, whiskey, sweat, and something beneath it all that's hard to name. Rot, maybe. Regret. It's louder than you expect, the room pulsing with laughter that sounds more like growling. The clatter of poker chips, the shriek of poorly tuned piano keys. But none of it feels warm. None of it feels safe. Because the saloon, for all its golden lamplight and raucous noise, is a cage. A trap dressed in velvet and dust. You came in for a drink. Maybe a place to sit. Maybe to forget the ache in your legs or the heat that has been clawing at your back all day. But no one comes to the saloon without being seen. And in the Wild West, being seen is often the first step toward being buried. You take a seat at the bar. The stool rocks under you, one leg shorter than the rest. The man beside you is missing a finger. He doesn't speak, just watches you in the mirror above the shelves of cheap liquor. Eyes narrow. The barkeep slaps down a glass before you even ask, the contents barely resembling whiskey. It burns like kerosene and tastes like regret. You drink it anyway. Behind you, poker players hunch over cards, their hats casting long shadows on the table. The dealer has hands move fast, too fast, and someone always seems to be losing more than they ought to. You see one man push back from the table, his smile cracking as he accuses another of palming a card. Chairs scrape, a hand twitches near a holster, and suddenly the room holds its breath. You turn your head just enough to see if it'll end in gunfire, but not enough to look like you're staring, because that's how it starts. A stare, a word, a laugh at the wrong time, a passing glance at the wrong woman. In the saloon, there's a price for every mistake, and the currency is blood. You bump into a man at the bar, and he takes it as a challenge, not because he cares about the bump, but because his pride is all he's got. And out here, pride weighs more than gold. You apologize. Or you don't. Either way, it might not matter. If he's had enough to drink, or not enough, he might reach for the knife tucked in his boot, or the derringer up his sleeve. Or maybe he doesn't reach at all. Maybe he just throws the first punch, and you're on your back before you even know the fight's begun. And then his friends join in. And yours? You don't have any. There's a woman on stage, corset pulled tight, smile painted on like a mask. She sings with dead eyes. You watch the crowd watch her. Some leer, some jeer. One man throws a coin, and she doesn't flinch when it hits her arm. It clinks to the floor. She doesn't look down. She's used to it. The saloon's pretty things are treated like the cards and the drinks, something to use, then discard. And woe to anyone who tries to treat them otherwise. You think of leaving, but something keeps you there. Maybe it's the way the room spins just slightly, the whiskey blurring the danger into something almost manageable. Or maybe it's because stepping back into the cold night means stepping back into the silence. And sometimes noise, even this kind, is better than your own thoughts. But you know the risk. You've seen men walk into a saloon and never walk back out. Fights break out for no reason. Sometimes they're loud, bottles smashing, tables tipping, someone getting thrown through the piano. But other times, they're quiet. A man follows another out back, hands in his pockets, and one shot later, only one returns. No one asks questions. No one calls for help. The saloon just absorbs it, swallows it whole, and keeps playing its tune. The saloon keeper? He's not your friend. He won't step in. His job is to sell you bad drink and keep the blood off the tables. He's seen too many like you pass through, dusty, wide-eyed, trying to act tougher than they feel. He might warn you once, maybe, After that, you're on your own. Even if you make it through the night without bleeding, the saloon still takes from you. It takes your money. The drinks are overpriced and the poker rigged. It takes your dignity. The way the room eyes you, the way you flinch when someone laughs too loud. And it takes your sleep, because even after you leave, the sounds echo. The way that man looked at you from across the table. The way that girl never blinked when the fight broke out. The way your heart pounded when someone touched your shoulder too suddenly. The saloon never forgets. It marks you, and it waits. Tomorrow, you might walk in again. Not because you want to, but because it is the only place in town with light and people and drink. You'll promise yourself you'll be careful. You'll stay quiet. Stay small, but you know better. The saloon doesn't let you hide. Sooner or later, it calls your name. And if you answer wrong, it'll be the last place you ever see. Out here, justice doesn't wear a robe. It wears boots, a hat, and a scowl. There's no courtroom, no jury of peers, no silver-tongued lawyer standing beside you. If you're lucky, there's a warning, a growled threat. They've got sheriffs, maybe even marshals if they're big enough. But one man with a tin star can keep the peace in a place where peace is a lie. Says you match the description. Tall, dark coat, riding a bay horse. And maybe you do. You've never been to Dead Man's Gulch, but you've ridden through the next valley over. And your coat's been with you since Tucson. You're hauled out into the dust, into the open. They don't ask questions. They shout. They chant. You see someone bring out a length of rope, already tied into a knot practiced too many times. You swear on your mother, on the Bible, on whatever name they'll believe in. But they're not listening. The sun's dropping low behind the hills, and everything turns gold, then red. But the crowd turns on them too, calls them coward, calls them soft. You watch the man shrink back into the mob, his head low, his voice drowned. The last chance you had slips away with him. The wind picks up, not strong, but steady. Enough to remind you of how high you are, of how still you have to stand. Some of them might not even care if you did it or not. They're not after guilt, they're after blood. The world spins, and your final breath is a gasp that never finishes. But if it doesn't, you dangle. You twitch. You kick the air and claw at nothing until your lungs give out and your body swings limp in the breeze. No one looks away. But out here, survival isn't about what you do. It's about what people think you did. And once they make up their minds, no truth in the world will loosen that rope. Children watch from behind skirts. Men smoke, and some laugh. It's just another evening on the frontier. Speak softly. Don't wear anything too memorable. Don't stand out. Because outlaws might shoot you for your saddle, but a mob? A mob will hang you for a name that isn't even yours. After a spectacle. Something to talk about over cards tomorrow night. And then someone else wheels out a chair, or drags a barrel, or points to the low branch of the dead tree at the edge of town, like it was justice. And even if they find the real outlaw tomorrow, the one who really robbed the coach, they want to say much. Maybe they'll mutter something about bad luck, or maybe they won't say anything at all. You're buried in a shallow grave on the edge of town, no name on the marker, just another mistake covered in dust. Doesn't matter. The rumor spreads before you've had time to stand up. Faces turn toward you, and suddenly the piano player stopped, and the only sound left is the clink of glasses and the whisper of something gone very, very wrong. The law, when it shows up, is outnumbered by guns and outshouted by crowds. And sometimes it's not even on your side. Sometimes the sheriff joins the mob. Sometimes he hands you over to it. A shove in the back that sends you stumbling out of town before your name is carved into a pine box. But most times, you don't get luck. You get a noose. The towns talk about law. Not when tempers burn hotter than the desert sun, and vengeance tastes sweeter than truth. They want someone to blame, and you're close enough. And they don't need proof. Someone points at you in a saloon and says you look like the man who held up the coach near Dead Man's Gulch. You try to speak, to explain, to ask what you're being accused of. But reason doesn't travel well in the West. They grab you. Rough hands, spit-laced curses, a rifle jabbed into your ribs. There's no announcement, no reading of charges, just a few voices rising above the others, demanding justice. Swift justice, Western justice. You tell them you didn't do it, and then you're standing on the barrel, or on the back of a wagon, hands tied, neck itching with the scratch of hemp. Sometimes someone steps forward, says maybe they've got the wrong man. Maybe they should wait, let things cool down. And then the silence, the kind that comes right before something terrible. Maybe the horse is slapped out from under you. Maybe the barrel is kicked. Maybe you're pushed and your foot slips. The rope jerks tight. If you're lucky, and not many are, the rope breaks your neck quick. Later, they'll talk about it like it was necessary. And the worst part? You weren't even trying to cause trouble. You were just passing through. You rode into town hoping for a drink, a meal, a little rest before the next stretch of road. So the next time you ride into a strange town, remember this. Keep your head down. She smiles at you as she pours the whiskey, the edge of her apron stained with something too red to be wine. Her voice is soft, her laugh light, and for a moment, just a flicker, you almost believe it. That may be here, in this crooked saloon filled with smoke and sour breath, you found something gentle, something human. But you know better. In the West, smiles are weapons. Kindness is a currency. You think about asking for water, but you've learned better. Out here, water's often worse. And besides, the whiskey does its job. It dulls your nerves just enough to stop shaking, but not enough to stop watching. It's not always the loud ones or the ones who swagger in with pistols on their hips. No, the real threats are quiet, measured, patient, the kind of man who plays cards without blinking, the kind of woman who can pour a drink while watching every door, every pocket, every twitch of your fingers. And the more inviting it feels, the more careful you ought to be. They say she cleaned the blood with a rag and went right back to serving drinks. No one reported it. No one even blinked. That's how it works out here. But with that slow, side-eyed glance that says, I'm ready if you are. You drink slow. You tip well, not too much, just enough to avoid offense. You nod to the prospector. You don't stare at the barmaid. And when a man brushes your shoulder on the way to the poker table, you apologize before he even turns around. It's exhausting, trying to measure every word, every gesture, every breath. But you've learned that's what survival costs. There's no justice system, just warnings you ignore at your own peril. You survived the saloon. The way the piano stops for just a beat as you pass by. This place remembers newcomers. It remembers mistakes, and it never forgets weakness. She slides the glass across the bar with a practiced grace, and you nod your thanks. You want to ask her name. Seen them lower their guard because of a soft voice or a warm laugh. They get too comfortable, too quick. They think they've found a friend, a lover, a partner in crime. And then they wake up without their boots, their money, or their heartbeat. Buried in a shallow grave behind the livery, just another skeleton for the dust to reclaim. The man laughing at the card table hasn't smiled in years, not really. He laughs like a man who's buried friends, who's earned every wrinkle on his sun-dried face. You look into his eyes and see the same thing you see in the mirror every morning. Weariness, edged with fear. You want to believe there is something sincere behind the way. She tilts her head and leans just close enough for her perfume to fill your lungs. But understand this. She's seen men like you come and go. Dusty, wide-eyed, full of hunger and hope. and she's seen what happens when they forget where they are. He scratches his chin with a blackened fingernail and spits tobacco juice into a dented tin. You shift slightly, placing your hand near your belt. You don't want trouble, but that doesn't mean it won't find you. Especially if someone thinks you're green, soft, or carrying something worth stealing. The West has no patience for fools who mistake comfort for safety. But then you catch the flash of metal beneath the hem of her boot. A small knife, clean and ready. You see the way she glances past your shoulder, not at you, but at the man 3 stools down. She's not alone. None of them are. She may call you sweetheart. She may touch your wrist when you hand over your coin. The whiskey burns going down. Not smooth, but rough, cheap, mixed with something that numbs more than your throat. A prospector at the end of the bar, wiry, yellow-eyed, with a beard like matted rope, hasn't stopped staring at you since you walked in. That's the thing about this place. You can never really tell who's dangerous. You once heard a story about a barmaid who slit a man's throat with a hairpin after he got too handsy. And the warnings are everywhere. Scars that speak louder than stories. Broken noses, empty holsters, missing fingers. You sip your drink and try to relax, but you can't, because everyone's watching everyone. Not openly, not rudely. And then there are the warnings that aren't just spoken aloud. The looks passed between locals when you enter. The way conversations lower when you get too close. You've seen men fall for the illusion. You don't want to be one of them. So you stay quiet. Trust is a luxury in the Wild West. And luxury? That belongs to dead men and rich fools. You can't afford it. Not here. Not tonight. So you finish your drink, tuck your coat tight, and step back into the night. Heart still beating, throat still burning, eyes darting to every shadow. But you know you'll have to go back tomorrow. You arrive chasing a dream, same as the rest of them. A rumor passed from town to town, scribbled in wanted posters, and whispered behind whiskey-soaked hands. Gold, somewhere up in the hills, just waiting to be taken. And maybe, once upon a time, that was true. Maybe there were nuggets as big as fists, men who struck a vein and lived the rest of their lives in velvet chairs with their boots off and their bellies full. But those stories are old now. And the gold? It's long gone. The camps are still there, sure. Shacks made from whatever could be dragged up the slope. Timber, tin, even animal hides. The smoke rising from them is thin, weak, like the people who built them. You walk through the muddy alleys between tents and smell unwashed flesh, bad stew, and desperation. Men are digging, but they don't smile. They barely speak. Their eyes are sunken, their hands blistered raw. They not hunting for wealth anymore. They just trying to stay alive long enough to pretend it is still possible. You buy a pickaxe, a tin pan. A map some drunk swears is real. He says there's still a place upstream where no one's dug. He says it like he's trying to believe it himself. You ride out at dawn, stomach empty, hope scraping against your ribs. When you reach the site, it's just rocks and broken dreams. You dig, you sweat, you bleed. You find nothing, not even flakes. Just more dirt, more exhaustion. Days blur. Your fingernails blacken. Your clothes hang loose. Every man around you smells of failure. Some dig in silence. Others shout at the ground like it betrayed them. A few simply lie down in the mud and stop moving. No one rushes to help. Out here, death is just part of the terrain. Then the scams start. A man offers to sell you guaranteed gold soil. A bag of sand laced with tiny specks of fool's gold. He salted himself. Another offers you a claim. He doesn't have time to work anymore. His boots are newer than yours. His gun is polished. You know what he's doing. But you still think about it. That's how bad it's gotten. And violence? It's everywhere. A man digs too close to someone else's stake. He vanishes by morning. Two partners strike something shiny. and one ends up face down in the river, skull split with a shovel. You hear the screams at night. Sometimes they're from pain, sometimes from madness, sometimes from both. No one trusts anyone. You sleep with one eye open, your pickaxe laid beside you like a weapon. You eat cold beans if you're lucky, rats if you're not. And every day you ask yourself, is today the day I strike it? Is today the day all this suffering becomes something more? It never is. The river doesn't care about your dreams. The hills don't care about your hunger. And the gold? The gold already belongs to someone else. Someone who got here 10 years before you did. Someone who carved out a fortune before the rush became a graveyard. The deeper truth sinks in slowly. This place was never meant for you. You weren't built for it. The backbreaking labor, the loneliness, the lies. The endless gamble where every shovel of dirt feels heavier than the last, where the only thing you ever strike is rock. You watch men sell their tools for bread. You see others turn to robbing miners instead of mining. They drift into town with hollow eyes and full pistols, and no one stops them because everyone understands. Everyone's thought about it. You start to think about it too. But even theft isn't simple here. You try to rob the wrong man, and you'll be the one bleeding in the mud, a pickaxe buried in your spine. You try to run with stolen gold, and someone will follow your tracks through the hills like a bloodhound. No one here gets away clean. No one gets rich without burying something, a conscience, a partner, a part of themselves. And so one morning, after another sleepless night, you sit beside the river with your boots half off and your stomach growling. You stare into the water, hoping it'll show you something. Anything. But it only reflects your face, tired, gaunt, cracked by the wind. That's when you realize it. This isn't a place to live. It's a place where hope comes to die. A trap baited with promises it never intended to keep. You pick up your pan one last time. Scoop the silt. Swirl it. Watch the mud dance in the shallow swirl. And when nothing glimmers, not even a single flake, you don't curse. You don't cry. You just nod, like someone who finally understands the joke. Because the gold rush was never for you. It was never for most of them. It was for the dealers, the thieves, the lucky few who cashed out before the rest caught on. And now it's just a story people tell. A lure for the next fool who thinks he'll beat the odds. You toss the pan into the river. It floats for a second, then sinks. Just like everything else out here. You came here with something in your chest. A fire, a hunger, a whisper that said maybe this was your chance. Maybe this place, with all its wide skies and endless trails, could become something more than a last resort. Maybe it could be your beginning. You rode west with stories in your ears and stars in your eyes, the saddle creaking beneath you, the horizon glowing like gold. You weren't ready, but you were willing. That counted for something. At least you thought it did. But the West doesn't care about what you thought. Now, you sit slumped against a rock somewhere between nowhere and less than that. Your hands are blistered, your boots are torn, and your stomach sounds like an empty drum. Dirt cakes your skin in layers thick enough to call armor. The rifle across your knees is rusty from sweat, and you can't remember the last time you used it for anything other than looking dangerous. You used to flinch at the sound of a gunshot. Now you barely blink. You've forgotten what day it is. Time doesn't matter out here. The sun rises, the sun burns, the sun dies, and you survive one more cycle. That's all there is. Survival. Not living. Not thriving. Just clawing your way from one hour to the next, hoping the ground holds and no one faster decides you're worth robbing. The dreams you carried out here? Gone. Not because you gave up on them, because the land stripped them from you, piece by piece, like flesh from bone. The West didn't crush them in one blow. It wore them down. 100 little insults, 1,000 small losses. The busted wagon wheel that set you back 3 days. The water you thought was clean that left you curled up and shaking. The horse that kicked and ran, leaving you to walk. The friend you buried shallow because the earth was too hard to dig deep. You're not brave anymore. You're not even angry. You're just empty. You thought hardship would make you tougher, that each wound would forge you into something steel-like and proud. But the West doesn't forge. It corrodes. It eats from the inside, starting with your hope, then your pride, then everything else, until there's just a shell with sunburnt skin and cracked lips, staring into the dust, waiting for something that never comes. You used to keep a journal. You used to count sunsets. You used to write letters, even if you had nowhere to send them. Now you talk to the wind. You whisper apologies to ghosts whose faces you can't remember. You wake up gripping your knife, heart racing from a nightmare you don't even understand. You don't look people in the eyes anymore. You've seen too many of them die. There's no justice here, no reward for the careful, no mercy for the desperate. You could help someone and get shot in the back. You could steal and make it rich. You could do everything right and still wake up bleeding under the stars. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't try to. And the worst part is that somehow you still haven't left. Some part of you clings to the idea that maybe, just maybe, if you hold on one more day, there'll be something. A clean drink of water, a soft bed, a kind face that doesn't want something from you. But that part of you is shrinking, thinning, like your breath in the cold morning air. Soon, even that will be gone. You've watched it happen to others. Men who start talking to their shadows. Women who stare too long at the river and finally walk in. Boys who came west thinking they'd find adventure and instead found unmarked graves. No one says anything. You just find the body, cover it with stones, and keep walking. Because that's what the West demands. Movement. Even if you're too tired to lift your legs, even if your bones scream, you keep going. Until you can't. And that's when it finally takes you. But by then, death isn't the cruelty. It's the mercy. The real cruelty is everything before. The loneliness, the violence, the slow erosion of everything that made you who you were. The West breaks you long before it kills you. It doesn't want you dead, not at first. It wants you worn out, cracked open, hollow. So maybe tomorrow you'll ride out again, try another trail, another town. Maybe you'll find something worth staying for. But deep down, you feel it in your spine, in your boots, in your breath. The West isn't for you. It never was. So now you know. The Wild West wasn't a painting on a tavern wall or a quiet desert under a golden sky. It wasn't duels at high noon or heroic rides into the sunset. It was hunger gnawing at your ribs. It was the weight of a pistol you hoped you wouldn't need, and the certainty that one day you would. It was dirt in your teeth, blood on your hands, and death that rode faster than justice ever could. You wouldn't survive a day, not because you're weak, but because no one really did. Not whole, not unchanged. The West didn't offer glory. It offered a deal. Your body, your sanity, your soul, in exchange for a chance at something better. A claim, a coin, a name whispered in saloons. And most who took that deal paid far more than they ever earned. Maybe you would have made it through the heat. Maybe you'd have kept your nerve through a bar fight, a gunshot, a fever. Maybe. But by nightfall, when the coyotes howled and the fire burned low and there was no one left to trust, not even yourself, you understand what so many before you did. The West wasn't built for you. It wasn't built for anyone. It devoured what it touched, and only the roughest pieces of men ever made it out. Thanks for riding along through this world of dust, dread, and desperation. If you made it this far, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. And if this kind of journey through forgotten history speaks to you, subscribe so we can take the next one together. Until then, rest easy, partner. You made it through the day. Just don't let the West follow you into your dreams.